So the first question is, BIM is pushing towards model-based information sharing to reduce the amount of file-based information sharing. How do we achieve if we're using contracts which need files? It's a matter of differentiating between deliverables, what your contract deliverables and what are your processes. So, for example, looking at a model will never be a contract document. It'll always be a contract deliverable, because if it's a contract document, it's like, well, which version of the model is part of your contract? So it's just bearing in mind when you're thinking about files or electronic data, that's probably not going to be part of your contract documents or the bit at the beginning, but it's what you use to create the process. But again, that's something you may need to probably explain to your legal advisors how the model works. To give you an example, so slightly off topic, but a model consists, as you know, of objects. You can pull data, you can create data from the model. You will only ever have a license for the objects if you're getting them from manufacturers. Most government contracts now require you to assign copyright in your models to the client, but you don't actually have that right as regards to objects, unless you split that out within your contract. You're immediately in breach as soon as you sign it, because you're promising to give something you don't have. And in the same way, if you're talking about files within the BIM process, it's working out where they properly sit. The next question is, how is a data lake different from BIM? Building information model is about creating machine readable and linkable information.
I'll do the data lake one if you like. For me, at least, I think BIM models is usually a reductive way of thinking about the information associated. Louder.
I think BIM is a hugely reductive way of thinking about data associated with the built environment. And I think in our experience of dealing with other client data sets that aren't necessarily, I mean, you mentioned this, they're not necessarily geometric always. The built environment is not only about geometry. I think there's often a spatial consequence, and BIM as a paradigm deals with that spatial consequence, but there are many other data sets, and if you think of BIM as only our only mechanism of organizing and storing data, then I think we'll be leaving out a huge amount of opportunities to incorporate many other concerns that are super relevant, certainly to the clients that we deal with.
The next question is for Phil. Is a platform accessible to all? How do we make the output of data interoperable to downstream workflow?
Our platform is still in super early development. And as I said, we're not really a software company, so it's not necessarily that we would make this or deliver this as a software product, but our tools, we intend to make as many of them open source as possible so that they're reusable, and we use our own APIs to connect into lots and lots of other data platforms. So it's important to us that we don't kind of lock it into our own workflows, but we are a consultancy that's not kind of trying to deliver this as a software product, let's say.
Can 3D Repo do clash detection?
Yeah, that's correct. As I mentioned, we do 3D diffing and instant clash. So another cool things, like I actually mentioned with the smart groups, we had that really good discovery as we were going along, and what I actually did myself when I was doing clash detection in the past, the models were so big and you had so much to go through. You had to do separate groups for model elements and validate it or group it just so you don't get overwhelmed or melt your machine down, you know. So you can actually use smart groups to group your model objects based by property sets, and then do instant clash detection on the client's machine to see where the clashes are, where they're happening, how they're happening. And once again, I said it's available for everyone. And what I found really useful is, the one thing I always had the problem with is I had project leads who wanted to know what was going on in the programs or with the project delivery, but never had a chance to do it themselves because they don't know how to use Navisworks, they don't know how to use Libri. They were always, well, with this solution, they can just open up their laptops, you know, log in and then see where the actual problems are happening, and then start already raising issues and then pushing it forwards and sharing it with the other team members or stakeholders. Hope that answers the question.
What's the cost of mission room technology?
That's a piece of string about that one. Sort of system we've got at the back, if you worked on something like £900 a month on a decent lease, up to with a cube, maybe £1,200–1,300 a month. That sort of figure. We obviously have capture technology for real. I was interested in the last presentation about capturing real buildings and real information, because that's where we've come from. So, you know, there's a whole host of different bits and pieces. But if you worked on around about £1,000 a month to have the hardware, you're not far off.
Question about smart groups. Can smart groups be used to answer the problem raised by the speaker interested in costs? Could I pull the bill of materials from nodes dynamically?
Sorry, what was that? So you say you want to query the costs, is that what it is? Or?
Can it be used to answer the problem raised by the speaker interested in costs? So basically, can it be used to help in terms of the cost perspective?
Yeah, of course. Like I said, you can use that to validate data. So any data that is attached to your model, BIM, let it be Kobe data or anything like that, or any other geometrical data, you can query that information. You can validate your model in that sense. And if you want to, like we showed you, you can query that and pull through our APIs into another platforms like, I don't know, Tableau, Power BI, whatever else you'll be using, or whatever else you want to build customizable to yourself, and then validate that by saying that, okay, cool, well, this model, how much in volumetrics does it have in concrete? So you can use your smart group to predefine specific, let's say, floor plates or areas of the models, and then pull that information by API query or directly reading the information that is available to you on our platform too, which you can read in our BIM data field, or seeing how many objects there are in the smart group. So if you look into it in depth, I think it is achievable, and that's what we're trying to do with smart groups and develop it even further to make you even that step closer to the data that there is in the model, which is, well, I think sometimes people are not having the access to that data because they don't know how to, or they don't have the application for it.
I think the other thing with regards to cost that it can definitely help with is that what seems to be misunderstood quite a lot on the capital expenditure point of view with commercial teams is that an element in a BIM model does not really have a cost. The cost is to build the element. The element itself does not contain a cost. It depends on its situation. It depends on its method of construction. There's probably one element could have 7 methods of construction associated. Each of those has cost and resource associated with it. So I think until we get the commercial teams on board, and potentially smart groups as a way to push this through the chain and get them on board, we won't be able to just easily drag cost out of a model. We'll have to push stuff in first and then pull something out. So it's a give and take.
General question for all of you. How can we all help foster innovation? Because it feels like the technology is moving faster than all of us can react. Any good suggestions?
We've just rebranded ourselves as 360-degree innovation, because every time we go and talk to somebody, they put us in front of an innovation director or an innovation manager. Everybody wants innovation. Do they actually understand what it means and how to manage it? I'm not so sure. But you know, I don't think anybody wants to hold back. You know, everything is moving so quickly, and really just got to ride the wave, you know, and see where it ends up.
And I would sort of contest a little bit the idea that technology is moving all that quickly. I think in our industry it's moving incredibly slowly. I think there's sort of famously less digital than farming, and so sort of find it a bit difficult to take that. You know, I think we're just far too conservative about these things. This happens in many other sectors, and we're just way behind. I think we have to change the way we do things in many ways in the industry, to not just to adopt digital technology. It's not going to save us. I think we have to change many of our processes, whether that's in design or construction or operation. And I think, you know, digital can support a transformation of many business processes rather than just being kind of, you know, sticking plaster or a splint to allow us to continue with our sort of bad behaviour as an industry, I think.
Is that the technology or the mindset though? Because the technology's there, arguably, but
I think
we all want
been there
to
for
do
20 years.
what we've always
the
done.
industry's kind of refused to adopt it.
I think that we're often paying a disservice to the people that work on the coalface, for want of a better phrase, in that we don't really give them the tools that they need to push the envelope in terms of technology. We've got this sort of top-down approach to innovation where we say, oh, here's a fantastic tool, and someone will say, well, I don't need exactly that tool. I need something more flexible. But instead, we don't give them anything, so they resort to spreadsheets and Word documents and PDFs and things like that. Whereas now we're hitting this sort of paradigm shift where there's tools out there like Airtable, like Power Apps that I attempted to show but failed, Microsoft Flow, which lets you integrate things, and it's all very consumer level, prosumer level, for all very cheap, a bit like 3D Repo. There's free trials, and you can run things and make apps yourself. But we've got to democratize those tools to the people that are working, rather than just expect them to be working in Excel one day and then all of a sudden magically be working in a 3D rich, everything interactive environment the next, as soon as we pay the bill to the software suppliers. So,
I just want to build on that as well. I spent 10 years in a very large engineering company, and there was time and money made available to build tools. But I think maybe too much emphasis was on the big kind of show, wow, check this thing out, let's show this put it in the annual brochure kind of thing. And actually it's the very, very small things that everybody actually uses that has the biggest impact on the business. And so you do need those inspirational projects that helps everybody kind of raise their expectations of what's coming next. But don't let that detract from the very basic things. And like Airtable is a perfect example. Fantastic technology. Just get that in the hands of everybody, and you'll find that a little app with one button, like if everybody uses it, I guarantee it's having a bigger impact on the business than one super fancy thing that's just shown in the boardroom once, and that's the end of it.
and I think because we work in an industry, my friend who's somewhere around there, QS was mentioning the other day, is that because we work in an industry that's very cyclical, we have 4 weekly or monthly periods where we're paying, we're revising, baselining programs, we're doing all this stuff. We don't have any time to make those minor increments, because before we know it, we're back onto a reporting cycle. And unless we make it as easy as possible for someone to innovate, they're never going to do it in that period. So we need to it needs to be quick and easy.
One last thing. I was that kind of person that would be tinkering with new tools. I'd be the person that downloaded 3D Repo before, like, you've had your website up or something, right? But the amount of internal resistance I got from the IT department, the fact I couldn't install things on my computer without getting permission from somebody, it blows my mind. And then I join a Silicon Valley startup, and I can choose my own computer, I've got admin rights to it. It's like, don't just get on and do it. Like, that's the mentality. And I feel like I could achieve so much more under that kind of liberal environment. I think that a lot of leadership should look at their IT department and say, look, that we seriously stifling the ability for our very talented people and staff to achieve great things for this company. I think that's a serious question people should ask.
I hope there's no one from IT.
There's not.
One quick question: what is Safety Base?
Safety Base is a unique feature to us. It's a collaborative platform where you can track your health and safety in 3D environment. So you can do mitigation process in there, let it be during design stages or a contractor delivering the project and spot something that is not quite right. And what I noticed is loads of the time people focus on design so much that they forget the last focus points, which is, this it's not closed off, or the access panel is open, or something is there that is not quite as accessible or dangerous, you can fall over. So what we do is we provide a really nice and, once again, user-friendly platform and environment where people can mitigate the procedure and come to a conclusion where they can resolve the issue and direct it to the right party that can make sure that nothing bad is going to happen either in building's use or during the construction phase.
There's one question which I'll take. It says, what's the minimum that the client needs to specify to get better outcomes from BIM? I think, at least starting from a legal contractual perspective, it's just working out what you want. What are the deliverables, and what you're going to use them for? I see a lot of models which you get to the end of the process, they get handed over to the FM contractor, who says they're completely useless, they're in the wrong format, they don't have the right information, they have too much information, we have to start from scratch. So all that money was the potential cost savings, a lot of the money was completely wasted. So it's sort of almost starting, let's work out what the answer is and then work out what the question is. You'll find in the ISO Part 2, I think it's Section 5, there's a very detailed section as to invitation to tender, and it splits it saying what you want, but also what's the acceptance criteria. So when do you know that people have done what it is you're asking for? Don't just say, we want some 3D models. It's, we want some 3D models that can be suitable for this purpose. For example, if you're a hospital, we want them to be used for a particular thing. We need certain people to be able to view them. And then people can deliver what your outcome is. Does anyone ever have thoughts? How can the industry provide better solutions for the client, or indeed the client be asking for the right thing?
There's an interesting parallel in software development. You just said the words acceptance criteria. And so sometimes I might be describing a new feature that I need for the product, but I'm not a software engineer. I don't know exactly how it's going to get done, but I need to define exactly what that is. And just articulating it in words is not enough. I need to have these acceptance criteria that say, if it can do this, if I put this in and this comes out, then I will say that you've met my expectations. And so I think that's a really key thing there, the idea of define what it should be able to do. It's like, you should be able to go from 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds, right? That's an acceptance criteria. And again, not enough is happening, I think, when people are asking for these digital deliverables to really define what they hope to get from them.
There's a question for Mission Room. How do you measure ROI in adopting your solutions?
It's interesting. When we started out, people didn't understand what the hell it was all about. So we had to go out and demo it, just why we're here today, really, is to show people what it's about. We worked out in the end that if people come back and buy it, they realise that it's worth pursuing. It's very, very difficult when you work in things like health and safety, where the safety performance is so high anyway, to say that buying Mission Room will give you a certain payback. A lot of these things are intuitive. We work on the basis, as I say, see more, understand better, reduce mistakes. We haven't got evidence, because these projects are so big and complex, to say that we've saved this much money. So you buy into it as a leap of faith, and then you keep buying into it because you realise it works.
I think that's the problem with a lot of the technology at the moment. Everyone wants evidence, but unless you have two identical projects side by side, you can't really say, I've just saved you 20%, because you never spent that 20% in the first place. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up, generally?
Something actually piggybacking off what you just mentioned about having two identical projects is that typically what we don't do, which we can do relatively easily, is find out what the parametric similarities between different projects are. So yeah, maybe we're not building the same thing twice, but maybe this section of it is the same as this section of something else we did, or maybe it's that times 2 or it's that times 10. And if we did that, then things like being able to assess return on investment for something like Mission Room, you would say, well, yeah, we've demonstrably had less incidents on this than we were expecting based on our benchmarking with these parameters. And once we start doing that, the sort of power of BIM will open up tenfold, I think.
Yeah, and we've seen that. So the more projects we've run through BIM and 3D Repo, the evidence as you build and do more and more projects, you learn the mistakes from the past. You can also then measure the types of projects, and when you make this change or do it this way, we'll have X amount of improvement on that. So the BIM movement and the evidence around it can really help to crystallise that.
One other thing I'd also share, and this is having gone from being a structural engineer for 10 years and then moving into software, and we even here, you just mentioned about being less digitized in agriculture and things, and we can really dig ourselves into a pit and feel like we're so terrible and worthless. But even today, I say to my software engineering colleagues, all these skyscrapers, these things. I worked on those, I designed those, and it blows their mind. They're like, what? Like, you know, like this stuff that you're building is like life critical, you know, and like thousands of people living in these buildings. And we should be more proud of ourselves as an industry. Like we do incredible, incredible things. And technology is just a new thing that we're figuring out how to adopt it. But we shouldn't, like, you know, put ourselves down and feel like we're not able to take advantage of this. It's just that, you know, now this technology is on the shelf, it's available. People are doing it all around us. Okay, so I think that we've got to be more confident about this future. This isn't rocket science, right? This is possible. We've just got to kind of give the tools to the younger generation and give them the freedom, and we'll have a renaissance in this industry. I really believe it.
So I'm going to call it to a close. Don't forget we have drinks now, and thank the speakers in the usual way.